Well, all right. Uh, it's now a day later, and I wanted to convey all this message in one video, but it got stretched out into two videos, and then it got stretched out into three videos. This is part three, and that's not a good idea, just from the point of view of posting videos. If you're a content creator, I've never been sure about that. That whole designation. What the hell does that mean? Content creator. But if you're one of those on YouTube, my experience is, and this is what I've learned from experience, that if you ever have the same a video with the same title, and make it part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, that the views inevitably get less and less the more you go along. That almost always seems to be the case. So I expect fewer people to watch this than who watched part 2, and fewer people to watch part 2 than who watched part 1. But that's okay. I'm just going to try to wrap up this story here, because it is time sensitive. It is topical. It is related to the death of Benedict XVI, Pope Emeritus, as he has been called. That's his title. That's something that was a consequence of him stepping down as Pope, resigning as Pope, in a most unusual circumstance. I never knew that happened before. I had never heard of it before, but it turns out it has happened before. And then, when it happened, when he said, "I'm going to step down as Pope," there was all this rush of news. Yeah, well, actually, it is something that happens occasionally. The like 600 years ago, Pope Pope Honorius, the 43rd, somebody I'd never heard of, somebody in the long line of popes, did it, and so therefore, it's not unprecedented. Well, it was unprecedented for me and for just about everybody else, and just like with the death of Pope John Paul I, after only a month of the papacy, the fact that Pope Benedict stepped down, resigned as Pope, prior to his death, is always going to strike me as strange. You're never going to convince me that something wasn't up with his resignation. Now, I do think part of the story probably is what's on the surface, and that is that Pope Benedict XVI was not a particularly eager pope the way that his predecessor was. Pope John Paul II loved being pope, traveled the world, gave speeches everywhere. He was kind of a rock star pope. And Benedict XVI, his whole demeanor is, very shy, sort of retiring, scholarly sort of person. Even though, like I said last time, he's been characterized by people on the left as being, this harsh heresy stomper kind of guy. That's really, it's like diminished expectations. In an age where nobody is a heresy stomper, nobody makes a big deal. Hardly anybody makes a big deal about heresy or defrocks anyone or disciplines anyone for lack of fidelity to the faith. If there's if there's a papacy in which like 4 or 5 priests get disciplined, get a finger wagging, then it's like, whoa, this guy's a heresy stomper. He's far right wing. He's so medieval, which is why Benedict got the reputation that he did. He was called John Paul II's bulldog. And I would say that of all the popes that have, that I've known in my lifetime, John Paul II was my pope, even though he wasn't I wasn't Catholic at any point during his papacy, but I always still felt him to be my pope. But I felt more so, even more so, with Benedict XVI. I felt a very tight kinship with the man. Everything that was good about John Paul II, I think, was even better about Benedict XVI. John Paul II, his fidelity to the faith, his brains, his philosophical nature, his ability to look at theology and promote traditional notions of theology while also being creative in how these notions are understood and presenting it in a new kind of way that, again, some traditionalists never liked the whole theology of the body, as it came to be called, that Pope John Paul II promoted, but it was still in line with a theological fidelity concerning sex, concerning the purpose of sex within marriage, and so forth. Benedict XVI had the same philosophical bent that Pope John Paul II did, but Benedict XVI to me had this added benefit of being someone who was really slapped hard by how much abuse there was of the Second Vatican Council, Vatican II. He was a promoter of it at the time. He was optimistic about it. During the 60s, he was kind of a church liberal. But then afterwards, when he saw the effect that it had in so many places, what came to be called the spirit of Vatican II, which wasn't, based in any of the actual writings of Vatican II, but it was this whole notion that now things are up for grabs. Now you can do it. We can do what we want. Let's do away with this old calcified faith and just go around with this hippie kind of, let's go around strumming guitars and all that nonsense. To Benedict, this really hit him hard and was a formative aspect of his thought. So I really loved Benedict for that, for being a man of goodwill, which I believe that he was, but also seeing the abuses that had come of Vatican II. Benedict went further than John Paul II in many significant ways. He promulgated a doctrine that any parish where there were people who wanted the Latin Mass, the Tridentine Mass, the Mass that had been in favor, that had been used prior to the mid-60s, when Vatican II said, Mass is, the normative Mass should be said in the language, in the vernacular, in the language of the nation where it's being held, or around the people, in the same language as the people who are attending it. Prior to that, Masses were held in Latin, and it was a much more formal, and in some ways much more dignified manner of celebrating the liturgy. So Benedict promulgated the notion that there should be that the Latin Mass should be made available to those who want it, and that seems like, I don't know why that should be objectionable to anyone, but it was. Liberal bishops and liberal priests and liberal types were like, oh my gosh, he actually wants to give the Latin Mass to people who want the Latin Mass. This is terrible. We've got to keep these people down. It really, that kind of reaction that it got from some people was just so well, I mean, it exposed them for who they really are. It exposed, as so often is the case, those on the left who give themselves the title of being open-minded. Really, they're the most rigid people around. It's their way or no way. So Benedict was the Pope when I actually finally came into the church in 2006. I think the first time I was officially received into the church as a member of the church was on during Holy Week of 2006. So that was probably April of that year. And as I've said before, in a way, it wasn't even like coming home. It was like this is where I was supposed to have been all along. There wasn't a feeling of triumph. There wasn't a feeling of entering, familiar ground. I didn't get the kind of rush out of it that you would think that I might, where I'm like, finally, I'm here, and that's a shame. I mean, that's kind of sad. But the truth is, all along the way, Catholics have been a stumbling block to my Catholic conversion. Catholics I've met in person, Catholics I've met online. I'm not going to name any names here, but I know the faith must be real, because it certainly wasn't that I found Catholics to be overwhelmingly appealing when I met them. In fact, often they were not. Often they were quite the opposite. So, as a result, my Catholicism never really made me feel like I was in solidarity with others who were Catholic, because I had had so many nasty run-ins with Catholics up to that point that it's kind of a miracle that it even happened. I mean, I kind of wanted to just chuck it. There were times when I just wanted to chuck it, because I was like, these are the people that I'm, and of course these were just, this is just a handful of people that I happened to come into contact and into conflict with. But I think that's significant that I did meet these kinds of people, because I think it was, and I'm only speculating here, but it was through meeting those kinds of people and knowing that they were Catholic that God was showing me, that it's not going to be, at least on this side of, this side of death, it's not going to be paradise. Being Catholic, being amongst other Catholics, worshiping with other Catholics. The liturgy is not going to be great. Oftentimes, it's still effectual. Again, per Taylor Marshall's, kept trying not to say Taylor Swift. Taylor Marshall's very compelling vision that he had, which I referred to in the first, in part one. And Taylor Marshall, by the way, was one of the Catholics that I came into conflict with in one way or another. And he's not someone I have a particularly, well, he doesn't know who I am, but he's not somebody who I particularly like. Nevertheless, he is an influential Catholic, and he is, and he came up with this notion that even if, metaphorically speaking, the church, our mother church, is very, very sick, that we can still obtain nourishment from her bosom, from the sacraments that are distributed through her through her intervention, because, as he put it, the milk is still good. So it was under Benedict that I became a Catholic. And I would not say the last 16 going on 17 years of being a Catholic, since my formal conversion in 2006. I would not say that it's been an easy road. It's had its ups and downs, certainly, just like the church has definitely had its ups and definitely had its downs over the last few years. I thank God for Pope John Paul II, and I thank God for Pope Benedict XVI in particular, because I felt that they, and especially Benedict, who's of course the less popular of the two of them, because he wasn't somebody who liked to go. He wasn't this extremely charismatic figure. As I said before, he was somebody who really maybe didn't even really want to be pope, but he felt like he had to do it. It was, it was what was thrown into his lap. He was elected by the papal conclave, and he said, "Okay, well, this is where I need to be right now." And he did the best he could. Again, just like John Paul II, he did the best he could, and I strongly believe that, given how thick with corruption the hierarchy of the church is right now. He for the time that he was there, the time that he could function, effectively. He did a lot of gutsy things. People forget when he offended the Muslims. I can't even remember what it was right now, but it was something where basically he was saying the Muslims have it wrong on this front, and that's it. I mean, like, you would think that somebody who is Catholic wouldn't be that controversial, that he would say, when he says, this other faith is not, it doesn't have the fullness of truth in it. But still, it was like a lot of people got really angry and upset about it and said, how dare he? But he stuck to his guns. And he was a good guy. I believe that. I mean, I don't know him. I can't know that for sure. And I know some people out there are highly doubtful about any pope being a good person, a good man. But I have a strong impression otherwise. I believe that Benedict and his predecessor John Paul II, but maybe especially Benedict, because I feel that Benedict had this humility about him that to me was very inspiring. He was just going about doing what he felt needed to be done, not for the sake of ego. I think John Paul II might have struggled with ego a bit, because he was as I said before, he was just this popular, charismatic, even in his late middle age, very, very handsome, very dashing kind of figure, who went around the world and gave these memorable speeches and very conspicuous character, whereas Benedict was more under the radar. That's where he liked to operate. That's how he did his thing. I need not enumerate all the problems that are faced by the church right now, today. But I'll just say that, just like Dr. Taylor Marshall says, the milk is still good. That is my belief. And no matter how bad it gets within Catholicism, we believe the gates of hell will not prevail. And there's I don't ever think to myself, well, if this happens, I'll just leave the church and I'll go here, because go here. Like, I could do this or do that, or become Orthodox, or become, I don't know, sedevacantist or whatever. Just go further. It's like, this is the last stop. I'm well aware that this is the last stop, and it's like, even if it pisses me off, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is where the fullness of the truth resides, as I understand it. And this is where where I was meant to be from the start. This is where my parents said I should be. And, of course, things went differently because they changed their minds. My mother changed her mind. My father said, okay, you can raise him Lutheran. And so I took a more circuitous route, but I eventually got to where I'm supposed to be. And that's where I am right now. And I give credit to the spirit of Pope Benedict XVI. God rest his eternal soul. And those are my thoughts. I'm kind of all over the place, but I just kind of had to get this out there. Thank you very much for watching.